So we're here at City College in Norwich today at the new Digi-Tech Factory, and I'm here with Jerry White, who's the Deputy Principal here at City College, to talk a bit about this fantastic new facility. So, hello Jerry.
Hello Tim, nice to see you.
Good to see you. So Digi-Tech Factory's been open just a few months now, hasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much since the beginning of the academic year.
Yeah, I mean, tell me a bit about it. I mean, what was the whole idea behind the Digi-Tech Factory?
Yeah, I mean, the driver really was that as a college, we've really reinvested in invigorating our IT and digital curriculum over the last 3 or 4 years, and we were reaching a point really where we needed specialist facilities that extended beyond some of the older classrooms and other IT facilities that we'd amended and updated. So with the support of the local enterprise partnership and partners like Department for Education and Norwich City Council, we were able to construct this purpose-built facility over 4 floors, a combination of really practical learning spaces in what we call the e-labs, where there's a combination of being able to get up and do the infrastructure work and do the networking and, you know, pull the backs off computers, as well as some of that quite technical electronics and electrical engineering work that interfaces so much with the digital world now. And then a number of these digital studios with the latest kit in, some really high quality PCs, double screens and stuff for people, I suppose, who range from the creative end of digital, because we've got quite a big creative area here in design and that kind of work, right through to, you know, what I would call the harder coding, software engineering sort of side of the business.
Okay, so what's, in terms of sort of specialist equipment you've got, you talked about sort of high-end PCs, what else have you got?
I mean, there's down in the labs, we've got a lot of the programming, a lot of PLC kind of work for some of the engineering stuff, and I know that we're investing and continuing to invest in some VR and AR kind of work as well. You know, all the time we've also got a couple of labs that are isolated in the terms of their networks, which allows us to do a lot of off-network stuff, which is
so cyber security,
which is quite useful, and obviously one of the challenges for operating some of that stuff on a college environment is you've got the whole college cyber security issues are quite keen at the moment, so we've had to design sort of the building to work in a particular way.
So it's a bit of a sandpit for the students to experiment with lots of different technologies. And presumably, you know, because tech's changing all the time, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, you'll be able to kind of reinvest in refreshing that
is a challenge, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be the ongoing challenge, I think, and that's why we need to carry on working with industry to understand, you know, for the relatively limited number of bucks that we've got, how can we get the maximum bang, really? And you know, I think we'll be carrying on working with industry partners to make sure that they can help us understand what the next thing is, and obviously also keeping an eye on what the curriculum is doing to make sure that we're keeping the curriculum as fresh and as up to date as possible. In some places we're constrained by what the national curriculum says that we need to teach, but in many of the new qualifications, such as the new T levels, we've got an element to be able to stretch into project work that employers can help us stimulate into some of the latest thinking.
Okay, so I suppose, you know, let's debunk some myths. I mean, myth one, a further education college, a college like this, is somewhere you go after, you know, if you're a school leaver, you go here and you do a vocational course. Or you're an adult and you want to do some adult learning, I don't know, perhaps an evening class or something like that. You come somewhere like that. Now,
that's perfectly true. It's probably not all that we do. I mean, you know, we've got computer science A-level being taught here as an example. So at this college, we do everything from the more academic end of the qualifications, the A-levels, through the new T-levels, which I think are probably in the space between A-levels and traditional vocational learning, and then through into some of the vocational courses and the apprenticeship work. And then over the top of that, we also provide higher education work at levels 4, 5 and 6. Undergraduate degrees, so we work in partnership with awarding organisations like Pearson and also with the University of East Anglia on our validated programmes to make sure that we're delivering degree level studies as well.
Okay, so it's a pretty comprehensive spread.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it is true that you can come here and do an evening class. It is true you can come and do your vocational learning. But you know, what we're all about on all of those programs is stretching every individual to their max and really trying to make sure that we're giving them the skills and the knowledge they need to progress to the next stage. It's not about the time they spend here, it's about what their time spent here unlocks in terms of their next step, whether that be into work, a promotion at work, gaining new skills, or going off to university.
And presumably, I mean, although we're here in Norwich, I mean, the students who are coming here to learn at Digi-Tech Factory, I mean, they're not just from Norwich, they're from further afield?
Yeah, I mean, the college has 3 out of every 10 young people in Norfolk studying at the college in one of its sites, whether it be here at Norwich or Easton, just south of the city, or at Paston in North Horsham. But here we've probably got, in the best part, 4,500 students of 16 to 18-year-old age, probably about a quarter of the county. Young people studying here, and you know, we've got some great partners over at East Coast College in the east of the county and College of West Anglia over in the west of the county. But for the main sway through central Norfolk, pretty much from north to south, Norwich is a key focal point in the way that the transport works, and we're very fortunate to be able to provide the education for a majority of young people in that region.
That's great. I mean, I'm keen to ask you dive a bit more into that point about T-levels, but I mean, I think, you know, before that, I mean, in terms of the business community in Norwich, because we've got some great tech businesses here, we've got some very big organisations like Aviva, obviously employ a lot of tech people and do apprenticeships and so on, but we've also got lots of SMEs and startups. I mean, how do you as a college work with the business community? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's always an area where I think, on reflection, we can do even better than we've done in the past. I mean, I think we've reached out on a number of occasions, and we will carry on trying to talk to individual companies, and indeed many of those firms are incredibly generous at coming forward and supporting us, whether it be coming in and sharing some of their expertise, taking some of our young people on placement, or just really wanting to understand a little bit more about the apprenticeship agenda. And you know, we are seeing apprenticeships really grow in the digital space, and I think that's great, especially post-pandemic, that people are thinking about how to invest in the next generation for their business, however big or small that business is.
Yeah.
I think there is, now we've effectively built the building, I think there is a lot of work to do to carry on those conversations and make sure that the curriculum is keeping up to date and that we're meeting the needs, in particular of the business community, understanding not just where are their entrants going to come from, but actually what is the upskilling that they also want their employees to have. What are the skills training opportunities that perhaps we could host here more locally than they are at the moment, you know, where they may have to, I don't know, travel to Cambridge or travel to London for those courses. How do we foster that and provide an environment that can help that community serve? Because I know how rich it is as an ecosystem supporting each other, and you know, we want to play a role in that.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, and I mean, you know, having you know, looked at things like the Levelling Up white paper and thinking about that sort of lifelong learning and upskilling agenda, it's obviously going to be a big driver for the economy. And when we're thinking about areas like, you know, we just walked past your sort of clean tech, you know, electric vehicle facilities that are under construction, really interesting. You know, the number of people who are going to need to upskill around decarbonisation, net zero, digital transformation, you know, automation, etc. And imagine there's going to be lots of opportunities for that.
Yeah, there is, and you know, we need to work with businesses to understand what they're seeing as the next driver for their particular sector or their particular business, because ultimately, and probably inevitably, educational curriculum tends to be a step or two behind the very forefront of innovation. So the challenge we've got all the time is that we've got to deliver educational qualifications and content that is as current as possible, and we're always challenging ourselves to do that. But where businesses can really add value working alongside us is really stretching us and enabling us to stretch those students beyond the envelope of the qualification into the areas that are really cutting edge and really inspiring them to think about what the future might hold. So, you know, I want our agricultural students over at Easton to really appreciate how much big data and technology is going to change agriculture over the next few years, as well as obviously learning some of the core skills that they need for the land-based industries right now. And I think we can only do that by partnering with the businesses that are at that cutting edge.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess you could argue that, you know, a lot of farmers probably think of themselves as data scientists now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, the technology, I mean, I've only scratched the surface in some of the understanding that I've got of that area, because we merged with Eastern reasonably recently, and we're starting to get a good appreciation of that work. But clearly the technology and the impact of technology and digitisation and big data on that particular sector is huge, and really is the future for feeding the world and solving some of those very real world problems that we've got now about where we're going to get our food from.
And problems that as a region we actually excel at solving already. So, so I was keen to find out a bit more about T-levels. So T-levels are a relatively new addition to the sort of education landscape. And you mentioned you're running T-levels here. I mean, just talk me through, first off, what are T-levels? So sort of what are they, I suppose, above, below, alternative to, what sort of types of T-levels are you offering here at City College? And I think also just talk a little bit about how it's going in terms of that partnership with business, because you mentioned, I think, industry placements.
Yeah. So a T-level is a level 3 qualification that lasts 2 years. And I suppose the shorthand is it's in a very similar space as the traditional A-level route. So you'll do your GCSEs, potentially get quite good GCSEs in order to be able to access T-levels because they're at a pretty high level and they're pretty involved. And then you'll move on to a T-level pathway for 2 years. There is the ability to potentially do an extra year to sort of get you ready for a T-level, and we're offering those opportunities as well. But the majority of the T-level itself is a 2-year pathway. The way I've heard it described is various ways really, but one description that I think some people get their heads around and helps people get their heads around it is it's sort of a combination of A-level study and apprenticeships. And sort of it's in that sort of technical and vocational qualification space. But it's quite academically challenging, it's quite, the content and the number of hours that the students will be studying is actually in excess of what they would study if they were doing 3 full A-levels. And on top of that, they've got some really practical elements to it as well, and the industry placement element, which is probably the most obvious example of that practical element, where they do have to spend up to about 12 weeks of that 2-year period working in industry, in businesses, in an extended placement. And I think this doesn't feel like the work experience week that businesses might have experienced when they took someone from a school. This feels much more like a sort of year in industry internship kind of model that I think people will be familiar with. And I think it's somewhere between those two is what we're looking for and how we're working with employers on those years or those industry placements.
So just thinking about that, with T-levels, I could see that if you are, as a college or you're a student and you're close to a big corporate like BT or Aviva or further afield, someone like Jaguar Land Rover or Airbus, that's fine. You've got a massive corporate, there's capability to engage with school and college level students, and there's presumably a big skills pipeline that they can do. How does it work if you're a smaller business that's perhaps not used to this idea of taking in a student for what's actually quite an extended period of time? How's that working so far?
I think it's working well. I think it's been a challenging period to launch it because obviously we've effectively launched T-levels in the middle of a pandemic, and that obviously hasn't helped in terms of the communication and the support. And we've also been really conscious that, of course, a huge number of businesses actually haven't been in their own workplace in order to support and supervise and mentor a young person coming into their workplace. But we've got specific colleagues here in our industry placement team who all they do all day is work alongside employers, demystifying it, debunking some of the challenges, and also providing employers with an awful lot of support about the kind of tools they could use to support that young person. And what we're increasingly finding is employers are really recognising just how much of a contribution to their own talent pipeline this might be. You're getting to know a young person who's likely to come out with some real great skills and knowledge in 6 months' time of a college, and you're building a relationship with them, and they could well be your next apprentice, your next employee, and I think a lot of businesses are thinking, well, this is a really good way of dipping their toe in that particular water.
Sort of try before, it's a kind of phrase, try before you buy.
It is.
So, rather than making that perhaps bigger commitment of an apprenticeship, or just taking on a new member of staff.
And of course, it's for some small businesses who might be thinking about taking on an apprenticeship, and they may be worried about that sort of workplace supervision and mentorship that they'll need to provide to that apprentice. Well, this is a way of trying out that model. What skills do you have as a business? What skills do your colleagues have, or do you need to develop in your colleagues to enable them to be ready to do the full apprenticeship? So it's a way of, in a sense, almost testing yourself and your colleagues out around those coaching and mentoring skills, and in a way that allows the young person to grow because they're getting really great first-hand experience of your business, but also allows you to grow as a company in terms of the way you're able to support people to onboard into your organisation, whether that be new employees or indeed people coming in some form of internship or industry placement.
No, I mean, I think that's fascinating because, and I've talked about it on the Tech East videos before. I mean, the uptake in digital apprenticeships in this part of the world, so Norfolk and Suffolk, it has been disappointing. I think we would all admit, and I think the barriers for especially SMEs taking on apprenticeships are quite well understood. And there are schemes like this Insight Apprenticeship scheme that the Norfolk County Council is running that are trying to help with that. There's levy transfer schemes, and there's all sorts of kind of helpful machinery in the background. But the reality is that for a small business that's growing fast, a start-up or scale up, that sometimes just that having that time and that confidence and that expertise to take on an apprentice, hasn't been there. So I love the idea that T-levels are a kind of almost like a safe introduction to some extent for apprenticeships.
Yeah, I mean, I think the skills that your staff are going to need to support someone on a 12-week industry placement are very similar to the skills that you're going to need to invest in support for an apprentice. Clearly, the apprenticeship will last for a longer duration of time, and you'll be even more invested in that young person because you'll be taking them on as an employee. But I think for some places it might be a really nice way of thinking about: do we have the skills? Do we have the capacity? What are the opportunities here? And we would hope to be able to support them to really feel confident by the end of those 12 weeks that they've gained those skills and got the support of an institution like our college, and I know the other colleges in the region would do exactly the same, to make sure that you do come back and say, well, I'll have an industry placement next year, but I'm also really interested now in apprenticeships, and what are the opportunities there? Because I think that's how we grow the ecosystem and how we actually overcome a lot of these skill shortages that businesses are always talking to me about. I can't get someone to do this specific skill. I can't. I'm going to have to grab someone from London, or I'm going to have to employ someone at distance who I never see in the office or whatever for that particular skill. Well,
absolutely, totally agree. So if I'm a local tech business and I've seen this video and I'm thinking, hey, T-levels, industry placement, that sounds interesting. Okay, what do I do? Who do I pick up the phone to? Where do I?
Well, me, I suppose, is the obvious answer. But we do have an industry placement team, and that's available on our website. But contact us in any way you want to through our website, but certainly you email me directly, jerry.white@ccn.ac.uk, and I'll put you in touch with the people you need to know, and we'll bite your hand off and make sure you've got the support you need.
Fantastic, Jerry. Thank you very much. Well, you heard it here first. Jerry White is available on his personal email address to answer your questions about T-levels, and it does sound like it's a great way to approach that whole world of not only T-levels but also apprenticeships. So thanks, Jerry. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for coming.